Does Star versus the Forces of Evil's racism plotline work? Spoilers, but you knew that. No. Okay, check out my Patreon. I don't actually have a Patreon, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll explain. It doesn't work, and it's because of this guy. Okay, who TF are you? Background first, I suppose. First of all, who am I? I am Sage Silent Fire, they, them, writer, artist, and a student of a lot of things. And now, a video essayist, too, I suppose. I do a lot of things, jack of all trades and all that. You might know me for my Wings of Fire art, my weird space dragon OC, or my multi-volume Star vs. AU, where I ditch the love triangle because I'm no better at writing that than the previous writers and smash Star's white savior dreams by showing her that maybe the future leader of the ruling class is not the one who should make life-changing decisions for the oppressed minority. Or you don't know me at all. I'm proud to live in the darkest corners of Tumblr, swinging unsuspecting people into a dreadful, multi-layered whirlpool of dead fandoms, weird animals, and math jokes. Anyway, you know me now, but before writing, before my steadily improving art, I am a social justice warrior. I've collected the 4 A's: autism, asexuality, aromanticism, and agenderness. ADHD better look out, I'm coming for you too. Because of my many weirdnesses, I've always related to things like bugs, reptiles, and, of course, weird monsters. All things people look down upon and don't think are worthy of respect. If you want to get a gauge of my devotion to this, when I read a certain TERF's wizard books as a kid, I was depressed for ages when Nagini, the giant man-eating snake, died. I even made an AU where she was saved by my weird psychic dragon OC, no relation to my weird space dragon OC, from my differently toned, completely original work. However, I am also very white, so I don't have total dominion over this topic in terms of personal experience, and I acknowledge that I may get some things wrong. But I will do my best to look at this from all perspectives. But first, I do understand that Star vs. is a kid's show. It's not going to be perfect by any means. But I don't think that's a reason to refrain from criticizing it or questioning the message it unintentionally sends. I think the messages it tries to send are valid and worthy. I just think it fails to send them in a well thought out and responsible way. And as you'll see later, I absolutely think those messages can be sent this way. This is not an, oh, why did this show for children not kill all its baddies and say friendship and love is the answer kind of video. In fact, I respect them for not killing the baddies, with only one notable exception. I just think the one baddie they did kill kind of undermines the whole message they're trying to send. But I still do love this show. It has a fascinating world and full of possibilities, and if anything, it fails to live up to the wonderful promise it gave us. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't still be talking about it years after it ended. But I still do think it dropped the ball in one regard. So let me treat you to the Toffee Rant, the video. Star vs. the Forces of Evil. Okay, for those not in the know, Star vs. is a show created by Darren Nefsey that falls under the Disney umbrella, so if you want to watch it, don't give Disney money. It's about an adventurous young princess who gets a magic wand and causes trouble. The show has 2 diametrically opposed halves, Seasons 1 and 2, which almost everyone agrees is the better half, and Seasons 3 and 4, which deal with things like systemic oppression, historical revisionism, and an army of genocidal racists, and yet still manages to be the most boring, filler-heavy slog, strangled by a shipping subplot, and kept alive only by the fans who refuse to give up because it'll get like the first 2 seasons eventually. Right? Okay. Yes, I do not like Seasons 3 and 4, but I'll still explain that they could have been good. The underlying idea is good. Star learns that her family has been oppressing the underlying class of monsters, and all the monsters she had been terrorizing in previous seasons were good people forced into crime by circumstances her family had caused. It's a good premise. Yes, she never has to face her own prejudices because she's just too good for a silly thing like fantasy racism. And yes, the monsters themselves have no say in what Star does supposedly for their benefit. But it really could have worked, but it doesn't. And it's almost entirely because of the way the first half is presented. The two halves of the show are, in my humble opinion, thematically opposed, and it's all because of Toffee. Toffee. The monster, the myth, the legend. I'll preface this by saying that I'm not really counting Ludo as a primary antagonist, or especially a monster antagonist. Yes, you could make arguments for him being one like Solaria is, but he's A, upstaged by Toffee each time he was in the spotlight, who in both cases was the real big bad, and B, kind of the butterfly's puppet. The source material states that his ancestors were put in charge to give the monsters the illusion of their own government, but were really another tool for the butterflies to control. And while Toffee was generally at least empathetic to the monsters in the few scenes interacting with them, showing real emotion that he doesn't show around humans, Ludo treated them like spoiled children, and not actual spoiled children who are only spoiled when it gives you an excuse to hurt them. Maybe that was his way of love, but it did not make him feel very connected to his home culture. He was not fighting for monster kind or against the butterflies, really, beyond what Toffee told him to do. I'm not one to gatekeep, but he was never even thinking about other monsters. Toffee was an extremist, but it's far easier to argue he was fighting for monster kind. Or he was fighting out of a petty desire to get his finger back. Depends on which creator you ask. But before he lost his finger, he was definitely acting for his view of monster kind. Anyway, Toffee. Toffee was the main draw of seasons 1 and 2. Ask anyone who their favorite Star versus antagonist is, and I'll bet you significant sums of money that it'll be Toffee. I am no exception. When he is first introduced, you know he's going to be a huge deal. He's the Knight of Cerberus, the first hint that the show has lore. His first episode, Fortune Cookies, has him hired by the joke antagonist who has been trying to steal Star's magic wand for the most of the season, Ludo Avarius. Tired of his army's constant failures, Ludo tries and fails to find a good manager for them. And then Toffee walks in. From the moment Toffee enters, seemingly from nowhere, you know he's different from the other stooges trying to get a slice of Ludo's pie. He is professional, charismatic, and calm. He is also, very clearly, a monster. This will definitely be important. He tricks Ludo into hiring him, quickly showing off his wits, ability to take control of the situation, and a quiet, understated weirdness. He could have done a normal job interview. He probably would have aced it. But he chooses to keep as much of himself secret as possible and earns the job without telling anybody a thing about himself. And he implies quite quickly that he has a past with the butterfly family and their magic. Over the rest of the season, a short season, mind you, Toffee does this in a total of 5 10-minute episodes, Toffee takes over Castle Avarius, eliminating any who oppose him and proving himself to be a competent leader, showing kindness to those who favor him even. Then, as everyone except Ludo saw coming from a light year away, he kicks Ludo out of his own castle and takes control of the army. From there, he acts quickly and kidnaps Star's best friend, threatening him unless Star does something she didn't even know she could do, destroy her wand. And he knows exactly how to do it, too, even knowing it was the first spell Star's mother taught her. The spell destroys the wand, Castle Avarius, and seemingly Toffee, and then the wand is reborn with a fancy new upgrade. But Toffee's smile as the wand is blowing up seems to imply that he planned even that. This all implies so much, and it's all extremely fascinating. Does the show do anything with it? Of course not, but that's a topic for a different video. Throughout Season 2, his plan unfolds. He continues manipulating Ludo through the half of the wand Ludo gets, and Star's wand does weird stuff, and the power of magic itself across the multiverse is waning. And then Toffee reappears, curb stomps the Magic High Commission, and manipulates Ludo into burning Star's spellbook and fully taking over Muni. This should be a huge deal. In a meta sense, it was. The event where this takes place, Battle for Muni, is the biggest special event of the series. Disney hyped it up. It was huge. They tried so hard and got so far. But in the end, it doesn't really matter. After all that setup, the ending was rushed, anticlimactic, explained nothing, and was never mentioned again, which hurts the story, but it also hurts the show's handling of Toffee. And we'll get to that ending. But first, let's look at what comes after. More specifically, who the next villains are. I can identify 4 main overarching villains for the next 2 seasons. Meteora. Meteora is the main villain of Season 3, the half-monster daughter of the Queen of Darkness. After being taken from her parents, she was emotionally and likely physically abused into being the perfect upholder of the current human status quo as headmistress of the reform school, St. Olga's. A reform school that is populated mainly by monsters. Yeah, Meteora was forced into it, and her backstory is beautiful and tragic. But she is still an instrument of Muni's colonization, and she still is very much half-human. In the end, Star and her mother Eclipsa try to reason with her but fail, and she is eventually wiped of her previous life and turned into a baby who looks much more like her human mother than her previous giant monster form. And I wouldn't have a problem with any of this on its own, but it begins to show an incredibly damning pattern. Solaria. We'll address Mina too, but first her master, and secondly, the primary victim of a plot twist and poorly foreshadowed reveal that could have worked, but because we don't see it happening, reads more and more like character assassination, and then resurrecting the character and assassinating them again. But first, the secondary victim of the character assassination, Solaria, the monster carver. Spoilers for Steven Universe in this section, because I'm going to compare this to its handling of the far too glibly called Nazi antagonists, the Diamonds. Skip to this time period and pause to read my non-spoiler summary, because this video is already really long. Anyway, yes, Marco and the Magic High Commission got more screen time to be wildly out of character than Solaria, but Solaria was shown to be a monster killer from the beginning. She lived a monster killer, she died on the battlefield even more of a monster killer. She was working on a total annihilation death spell that would kill each and every monster horribly. She thought the monsters were happier, dead. And not just dead. Dead in various torturous, horrible ways, and septarians like Toffee, whom she couldn't kill, were to be exploded into pieces and spread apart as much as possible. Toffee was implied to have killed her in a skirmish, and to be honest, he was absolutely 100% in the right for that, king. Solaria was the reason Mina was the way she was in every way. Mina came to her as a humble rag seller and ended up a superpowered, genocidal racist who completely idolized Solaria in every way. Solaria did not change in life. The Magic High Commission and Glossaric, every princess's mentor, all gave her the opportunities to become better. There was a parley, a peace treaty that she scorned, instead continuing the war. Her own daughter, who she loved more than life itself, knew she had to keep her monster lover a secret, or Solaria would kill him. And it wasn't just cowardice. She literally tried to kill him the first and only time they encountered each other. If they met again, Globgor would have been dead before the words monster boyfriend were even uttered. Solaria was more of a monster than any of her victims. Lived a monster, died a monster. So why, pray tell, does she get a post-death redemption? Why does her ghost out of bumfuck nowhere turn her back on Mina, who she was responsible for, and accept her half-monster granddaughter? There's no reason for this. In literally the only other scene her ghost is in, she and the other queens are visibly angry and sad about the magic fix/genocide Star is about to enact to save some monsters. Then all the queens reappear and she's totally fine with it? I don't care how emotional the scene is, it all rings hollow. But Solaria is basically this universe's equivalent of, not Hitler, though the comparison does fit, unfortunately, well. She is more medieval. She's more like King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, two rulers of Spain who almost literally invented racism by driving anyone less than white and Christian out of Spain. Yes, I know you didn't expect the Spanish Inquisition. They're also behind the colonization of the Americas. Real nasty people. But I cannot deny that Solaria would make an excellent fascist if such a thing existed on Muni. So that metaphor is apt too. And I cannot emphasize how serious I am when I say Solaria is a fascist in the making. I've seen it used far too casually before, but this isn't like, say, the Diamond Steven universe. The Diamonds didn't realize what they were doing was really hurting other gems, much less that anyone who wasn't a gem could be a person. They never bothered to find out until it affected them. Theirs was a crime of indifference, and the show poured all its limited screen time into showing that they could be better, and that they actively did work to be better. More importantly, though, was the fact that it didn't matter if they accepted Steven or not, he accepted himself. I don't like the Diamonds. You aren't supposed to like them. You're supposed to grit your teeth and hope Steven forces them to work to be better. And he does, and they do. The show makes it clear that even if they were never redeemed or acknowledged they did anything wrong, they were still wrong. It was still a worthwhile endeavor to oppose them. All Steven wanted from them was to dismantle the Gempire and heal the corrupted gems, and he made himself scarce after that. Solaria, however, she was point-blank in on the action. She led every battle. She personally killed hundreds of monsters. She did not do anything to get better. Say it with me. Redemption is not whether a person forgives you or comes to an understanding with you. It is whether or not you try to repair as much as possible the harm you caused, specifically aimed towards the victims of said harm, not people who were incidentally involved. The Diamonds healed the corrupted and shattered gems. The Diamonds dismantled their empire. The Diamonds accepted the crystal gems and off-colors back into the fold. The Diamonds followed the wonderful Jewish concept of teshuvah to a T, which really makes me angry that people call them fascists and Nazis. Solaria, however, did not do anything in life or in death to repair the harm she caused. She never even faces the families she destroyed, the lives she ruined, or the real intended victims of her crusade. We can't do that because it would mean acknowledging that her victims were people. And given that her only named victim is Toffee, we can't do that. No. Instead, let's have her work with 4 human queens to destroy an essential and tangentially related piece of the universe 300 years later, and have one singular tangential victim of her evil forgive her, and act like she is redeemed. Yay! Redemption! And even that comes out of nowhere. The real Solaria would not change because her daughter fell in love with the monster. If anything, she'd think Globgor had seduced her poor innocent Eclipsa in order to take power away from the humans. She should not get a resolution after making no effort to make things better, and we should know she was wrong without her acknowledging it. The show should make it clear that she was unilaterally in the wrong. There should be no understanding, and if they weren't going to dedicate time to her redemption, they should have left it at Eclipsa turning away. And further, if you need the oppressor to acknowledge what they did was wrong in order for everyone to believe it, you should not be trusted as a writer or even a consumer of media. And then she fades peacefully into the beyond, a smile on her face. Goodbye, Solaria. 1's an accident. 2's a coincidence. 3 is a pattern. The way Starverses did Solaria's arc, it was like if the Diamond Steven universe showed up on Earth during, I don't know, the Cluster arc, and destroyed every single gem, including themselves, and then died with a smile towards the logically horrified Stephen and Connie, somehow knowing Stephen was pink and not caring that this would at best severely hurt him, and that all his friends and family are now dead. And then Stephen isn't actually horrified, he's totally fine with it and forgives the diamonds, despite that, according to logic, he would not know what the hell happened. And also, they shatter bismuth in season 3. Just shatter her. It would be extremely what the fuck, but because Star vs. writers are stupid, Eclipse is totally fine with it, so it's totally fine. It's fine. End spoilers. But Solaria is not the worst dealt victim of character assassination in the end. She wasn't even the worst written Queen of Muni. No, that goes to our third post-Toffee antagonist, Star's mother, Queen Moon the Undaunted. Moon's plot twist was badly done. Everyone knows it. Everyone and their mother deeply, painfully knows it. But I'm here to talk about how it ties in with the racism metaphor. Moon is established to be racist, and we see her slowly get better through her friendship with Eclipsa and her parenthood of Star, both of whom question Moomin ideals. She doesn't really talk to Buckfrog or any other monster after their first conversation, which establishes her racism, but it's not on the oppressed groups to de-radicalize their oppressors. After all, Toffee killed her mother at a peace treaty signing. We don't get backstory for it or Toffee's side of the story. Toffee just hates peace, apparently, and had no plans to manipulate his way into a better deal for monsters, like his Season 1 characterization would suggest. But anyways, unlike a lot of racists, Moon actually has a reason to mistrust monsters. But over the course of Season 3, she learns the error of her ways. This development continues, and except for minor blips, she continues learning that her predecessors were misguided at best, and monsters are good people. And this seemingly culminates in her scene in Coronation, tongue twister, where, while she doesn't fully endorse Eclipsa, she doesn't condemn her either. And then it's all tossed in the trash. She was working for Mina because she got bad vibes from Eclipsa and blamed her for an accident Moon caused. And you know what the worst thing is? I can totally see this twist working if they ditched the twist aspect and showed it happening on screen. And if they weren't terrified of making Moon a little less principled. Because Moon was, at the time, the founding member of a Moomin village who left Muni proper because, for various reasons, they didn't support Queen Eclipsa. So Moon lives 24/7 in that environment that slowly grows more toxic and bigoted and cult-like as time goes on. And perhaps she tries to stay above it all, but she doesn't quite trust Eclipsa, and that environment slowly turns that mistrust into hatred and anger. How dare she keep me away from my family? How dare she use dark magic that corrupted me? How dare she take away these good people's homes and give them to monsters? How dare she support monsters? Monsters killed my mother. Could have been an amazing story about how moderate, good-hearted people are radicalized and programmed into the alt-right or cults. And then Mina comes in, and instead of wanting to prevent her from doing far worse, Moon could want her to raise hell, to hurt civilians, to push monsters off a cliff. Restarting the Solarian program would be seen as a gift from the heavens, come to give them the power to do what they must do. This could be a heart-wrenching story as Star learns what became of her mother. But no, deprogramming is really hard to do and harder to write, and Moon needs to be back to her moral self in less than a day so she can destroy the magic and tearfully hug Star, who, say it with me, forgives her completely, despite the fact that her actions killed people. She might as well not have betrayed them. Another Moomin antagonist, completely unpunished, off the hook. And it was so easy to avoid. Just make Mina able to dip down. There, no research or character assassination or undeserved forgiveness required. And speaking of Mina, oh Mina, the spider, perhaps because she was the embodiment of Muni's bigotry and the plot that had been the secondary focus behind the love triangle of the show for the past 2 seasons. She was detested by pretty much everyone. And not because she was just that evil like other better written villains, but because she was outright stupid, lackluster, and barely intimidating. With Toffee, every word he speaks commands attention. With Mina, the second she opens her idiot mouth, you want her to stop talking. Again, not because she's hateful or bigoted, but because she undermines her own threat with every word that spills out of her stupid mouth. Even the characters don't take her seriously, and this is the show's excuse for genocide. Right, what she represents for the racism metaphor. Mina is the embodiment of the bigotry, the racism. She fights monsters. She tries to kill them, Star and Eclipsa repeatedly. She had powerful superpowers. She has a tragic backstory. And of course, she starts the series as Star's hero. She could have been an excuse for Star to look inwards and see how she could so easily become Mina and think about how she needs to change. Mina really could have challenged Star, but she doesn't. Star just looks down at Mina from her pedestal of moral righteousness, and everyone agrees that Star is 100% in the right. Okay, I would be fine with that, maybe. It is a kid's show and moral complexity doesn't always have to be there. Perhaps I would like it more if the pinnacle of superior morality was a monster, and definitely if the show didn't highlight that Mina used to be normal. Yeah, a lot of horrible people in real life used to be normal, but that rarely matters in the present since they're bad now, and it didn't matter with Mina either. And just as many people start out bigoted and remain bigots their entire life. Further, despite her sympathetic backstory that fails toward making her morally complex, current-day Mina is your typical crazy bigot stereotype, the kind of ableist caricature that makes you think, well, I could never be like her, I'm not crazy. Real bigots are not insane or even delusional, definitely not in the medical sense. They're just evil people who have convinced themselves that they are right. No mental illness required. If you want an example of this done right, look no further than Emperor Bellos from the Owl House. Spoiler alert for Season 2B, skip to this timestamp if you don't want those. Okay, Bellos' beliefs, kill all of which kind for the good of humanity, sound insane when you look at them from Luz's perspective. We've seen the Boiling Isles. We know the witches aren't evil. But when you consider that Bellos was raised in colonial America during the height of the witch trials, raised specifically to be a witch hunter, he begins to make sense. He isn't bigoted because he is crazy. No, he simply believes without evidence that witches and magic are evil because that's what he was taught. And unfortunately, believing things without evidence is part of the human condition. Caleb, his brother, becomes a shining example of deprogramming what Star and Moon and Eclipsa really should have been. Spoilers over. So, Mina is an ableist stereotype, a really weak villain, and a terrible way to ideologically challenge a toothpick, much less the main character of the audience. But she is a representation of the racism, so once magic is destroyed, Mina is depowered and everything is over. What happens to Mina?
Toodaloos, doormats. Bye-bye. Who's coming with me?
Oh, I'd like to come with you. Where are we going?
Into the woods.
She just walks away. Sure, killing her wouldn't solve the racism, and I'm glad the show acknowledges that. But I am done being charitable. She walks away. Star lets her walk away. This woman is a murderer. She deserves at least to go on trial. I am not normally an advocate for prison, but come on. She should get some punishment and decades in a rehabilitation facility. She is not fit for society. She tried a violent overthrow of the government, all to be able to kill people unopposed. Even if they ditch the old government with no plans on what to replace it with in the end, the new government should do something to stop her from stealing a gun and going on a massacre. If she was able to find an army of humans to give superpowers, what's stopping her from finding another one from the citizens of Earth who are abruptly shoved into Muni because of the beyond stupid world merger BS they pulled at the end of Cleave? So, let's not 1, not 2, not even 3, but 4 redeemed or unpunished colonizer villains. Let's see what they did for the one monster villain. Surely they make him sympathetic. Surely they show mercy or let him walk away powerless from the fight, or even turn him into a form where he can't hurt anyone. She burns him alive while his back was turned, while he was walking away, leaving her friends and family alive. And she is never portrayed as being in the wrong for this. Ever. Toffee's just evil. Irredeemable. Wait, what did he do to deserve this again? Let's see. He killed Queen Solaria. No, that's actually a point in his favor. He killed Queen Comet, but since all we get is the human perspective on that, we don't actually know why he did it, or if he had reasons beyond being that evil. Like, Queen Comet was decent to the monsters, but she was still really, really racist, and her chapter comes off as condescending at best. Not to mention, no matter how nice she was still the Queen of Muni, the oppressive and colonizing force terrorizing the monsters. And Toffee never mentions Comet's death, and we don't even know for sure if the narrative we have is right and he actually killed her, because we don't know what actually happened, or why, or even the terms of the peace treaty. Only seeing the aftermath from Moon's eyes, the death of Comet is a huge unknown. What else did he do? Every monster who appears in Storm the Castle appears later, so they clearly had ample time to get out of the blast radius when the wand blew up, and none of them died. He was okay with a few monsters who made it their life's mission to help Ludo do a really stupid and dangerous thing, get mildly hurt. He broke the main villain of the show's arm that one time. He acted exasperated when Boofly kept annoying him. Really, the only solid points against him are allowing Ludo to hurt and enslave people temporarily, his occasional general callousness when trying to achieve his goals, and his threats against Marco and Storm the Castle and leaving Star to die in his eponymous episode, since they're both just children. But again, we don't know how involved he was in Ludo's tyranny, and he intervenes to save Buffrog. And in Storm the Castle, he was clearly banking on Star caring too much about Marco to allow him to die, and he was right about that. He didn't want to hurt or take pleasure in hurting Marco. And for his callousness, people talk about him as if he's definitely some kind of evil psychopath without emotion, but that's also not true. It's subtle, but he does express emotion during his earlier episodes when he's around monsters, and only then. He's only repressed and emotionless around humans. But let's not give him the benefit of the doubt. The show sure doesn't, after all. Let's say Comet was 100% pure and innocent. Heck, let's say Solaria was too. Let's fully count him up for the threats against Marco and Star and Glossoric's easily healed broken arm. And let's say he was just so mean to everyone all the time. That's 4 people and a few injuries to an all-powerful, easily healed being who was the cause of all the show's problems. and to a few people's pride. Maybe a few more. It's not clear because he doesn't have a backstory and attempted war deaths when he tried to fight against his colonizers. That's nothing compared to the genocide of several entire races. Moon, Mina, Meteora, and Solaria all attempted genocide, even succeeded sometimes too. And yet they're let off with a slap on the wrist. But Toffee, the one monster villain, he's melted alive. No mercy for him. So the first 2 seasons dramatically contradict each other. Are we supposed to hate monsters or not? Are we supposed to melt their faces off if they get too uppity or not? When it comes to monsters, are we supposed to shoot first, ask questions later, or not? Star versus racism metaphor doesn't work for one simple reason. Star and the audience's intended respect for monsters is explicitly conditional. With the Mumin villains, Star saw them as equals and made attempts at reaching out to them. We could have had the same with Toffee, but we didn't. Star never even tried. And I'm sure you've got counter-arguments, so I've prepared some counter-arguments just in case. But Star was more mature after Toffee. If Star ever realized that killing Toffee was deeply morally wrong, the show does fuck all to actually tell us this. During the rare times Toffee is brought up after this, it's always bringing back magic that was the mistake, not graphically and torturously murdering a fellow sapient being without even a trial or bothering to learn his side of the story. Eclipsa got a trial, but not Toffee. Why not? But Toffee was far too dangerous to stay alive. No, he wasn't. Star clearly had the capacity to kill him many times over. If not, they had the darkest spell. If Toffee ever tried his magic draining shtick again, they could just go back to the realm of magic and stop him before shit got bad. They could lock him up and give him a trial like they did with the Mumin Eclipsa. If he escapes, plaster his face everywhere and set a bounty so high it would feed an entire family for centuries. Muni's nobility are certainly wealthy enough. And there's nowhere canonically he could go with where someone wouldn't turn him in, except maybe the realm of magic, which he can't get to for the above reasons. It's not that hard. Or just give him a hug. Given that Toffee's backstory is implied to be bad, and given how the other monsters reacted to being shown affection, it might be crazy enough to work. But Toffee can't be reasoned with. And Mina can, and Meteora, who stole the souls of the entire kingdom, can, and Solaria, who danced around a burning pile of monster corpses for fun, can. Say it to my face that you seriously think the level-headed Toffee was more unreasonable than the ableist stereotype. Say it. And even if he wasn't, Star didn't even bother to try to reason with him. She tried with all the others, but not Toffee. Why? We never hear Toffee's motives, his feelings, his backstory. Heck, we have to comb through scraps and subtext to get a personality behind obvious evil in a contrast with Star. Toffee never gets to tell his side of the story. Again, why? I think we all know why. But Meteora got a bad fate too. Yes, at the end of Season 3, Meteora gets turned into a baby with her memories either wiped or locked away. But this is nothing compared to Toffee's fate, and in fact it still works against the show. Meteora is the least humanoid and most monstrous of the colonizer quartet, and she's also the least colonizer-y, and in my opinion the most justified in her rampage. And Eclipsa appeared to be getting through to her during their previous conversation. Moon interrupted it, but you can clearly see her mother's words are getting through to her. But later, when Eclipsa confronts her a second time, she doesn't try again. No I love yous, or even exchanged words that Meteora doesn't initiate. She's become larger and more physically monstrous, so she must be destroyed. But the MHC died. Yeah, the Magic High Commission were a group of colonizers who died in the magic genocide. But One of them was redeemed and didn't have her corpse displayed on screen. Not the giant space skeleton, or the crystal man with snake arms, or even the bipedal magic deer, but the flame-haired humanoid, who could be mistaken for a regular human with dyed hair at first glance. Never mind that she was just as racist, and Omnitraxis was always the voice of reason, and Romulus was practically begging for a redemption arc, and Sean was just supposed to be the neutral party. Hekapoo gets redeemed, the one who is arguably the least likely to rebel against the MHC, who sided with Solaria during her war meetings. She's popular and far less visually monstrous than the others, so she gets a shoehorned-in redemption arc. Yay! But other monsters. Yes, let's look at the other monsters. The ones who lived and were considered good. Let's look at them. Ludo. Already covered him. He never works for the good of monster kind. Buff Frog should be the voice of reason, but never once questions Star. Globcore eclipses Buff Frog. He never once questions her. In fact, the show makes him the morally questionable one of the duo by making him a human eater, a cannibal, which is yikes and really, really racist when the monsters are an allegory for colonized people. Are you kidding me? And Eclipsa, the colonizing white lady, taught him to be a vegetarian and morals and ew. Like, Eclipse's mother is Solaria, the fucking monster carver. You couldn't make her have a dark and sordid past involving that. What about the Septarian she killed with the darkest spell? Surely they have friends and loved ones rattling around, wanting justified revenge? God, another topic I could talk about all day. Tom is a main character, no matter how horribly the narrative treats him, but is never involved with the monster racism plot, and his monsterness is only brought up when he's trying to guilt Buff Frog into doing what Star wants him to do. Ludo's army? Goes right back to Ludo despite how horribly he treated them, never used for the racism plotline. Rasticor? Non-presence. Archibald? Never heard of him. Seth? Yeesh, let's do this. Never appears in the show, never even mentioned in the show, is either alive or dead, depending on which creator you ask. Yeah, not good. None of them have any interest in their own oppression, unless they're Seth, in which case they're Schrodinger's raptor. Yeesh. This, my friend, makes Star Butterfly the ultimate white savior in an atypical but no less horrible way. In the typical white savior story, well, they're not, actually good stories. At least there are non-white characters to save. At least there is a culture for the mighty whitey to appropriate. At least the writers aren't so disinterested in their own supposedly moving message that all people remember from the story is the love dodecahedron. Because if the writers were the bare minimum of competent, well, we'd at least have noticed and talked about the white saviority of the actual plot of seasons 3 and 4 by now. Concluding thesis. Star Versus has an unintentional message here. If you fight against the white savior protagonists, the more visibly you deviate from the typical human form, the more you fight for your own freedom, the worse your fate will be. And whatever happens to you will be your own fault. It will be justified and unquestioned, even celebrated. Because you're evil. Because you are a monster. Toffee. The potential. I want to circle back to the other issues with the racism plotline. Remember when I said Star never had to battle internalized racism or be challenged by monsters in her life, ever? Well, she should have. She, as the princess of the oppressing class, should have baggage to unpack and problems to address. It should have been a long road to being not racist, not a short hop after an equally short realization. She should have made mistakes and learned that that's not an irreconcilable evil that will get you #canceled, but a natural part of becoming anti-racist. And it should have been helped along by actual monsters. She's surrounded by humans. She should learn things from monsters too. She and Eclipsa should be shown on screen getting advice and counsel from the monsters they're supposed to be helping. We need sane, named monsters who actively challenge and improve them. Because the monsters we did get, either they're yes men, ignorant, or evil. Either way, they don't do much for their own cause. Or they're toffee, and they get a horrible death. Even Meteora got a horrible end. It kind of sends the message that marginalized groups shouldn't fight their oppressors, and should instead roll over and wait for said oppressors to grow a conscience on their own. And you know who could have challenged and helped Star? Who could have been the catalyst for both their own and Star's redemption arcs? Who could have been a key player in an arc of learning your enemy was not only a Magneto type doing the wrong thing for the right reasons, but those reasons were actively being fought against by you, the protagonist. Yeah, Toffee. On antagonists. A good antagonist challenges the protagonist on multiple levels. In terms of fantasy, there's always the physical or existential threat, but a good antagonist challenges the protagonist on an ideological level, too. Bill Cipher is the antithesis to Gravity Falls' theme of growing up, and is Mabel and Dipper's desire to keep having summer fun forever terribly personified. Emperor Bellos represents the conformity and bigotry that the Owl House exists to refute, and he is able to manipulate even Luce, the protagonist. He is the institutional evil that encroaches on the world Luce feels at home in, and the oppressive society that tries to stuff neurodivergent kids like Luce into a box. Toffee does none of that. He has all the aesthetics of an ideologically challenging villain, being quiet, manipulative, and soft-spoken to Star's loud, obvious brashness, but he doesn't really stand for anything besides what we have to scour through all his appearances for. And I've already explained how those scraps of motivation reflect very, very badly on the protagonists. If the creators can change your motives on a whim, you aren't a good ideological antagonist. In terms of his time on screen, Toffee is just a walking generic doomsday villain with an unusual gimmick. We have to comb through unintentional symbolism to even get a hint of his personality, which means he can't pose an ideological challenge because he doesn't have an explicit ideology. Star is already not racist, so he can't challenge her on that. Star is so magically powerful that she burns away a plan at least several years into the making, with brute force, and if we're being charitable, the cleverness of those around her. Star just brute forces her way through him, not even bothering to learn who he is, or was. And it's the same way with all her other villains. I know I said Mina couldn't ideologically challenge a toothpick, but really, none of them could. The only one that came close was Meteora, and she still had to be put down like old Yaller. Toffee is, unfortunately, no different. Disclaimer. I know Michael C. Hall, Toffee's voice actor, had cancer, and no one knew if he would survive. But that's all the more reason for a Battle for Meanie ending. Or at the very least, make his scenes have a lasting impact on the show. Maybe Star kills him, but it's slowly revealed that no, she was horribly in the wrong for that. Maybe monsters get pissed that she killed someone they view as a hero, and Star, who is not racist, realizes she was wrong. Or maybe instead of that bizarre afterlife situation with Glossaric, someone tells her Toffee's tragic backstory. I can't see him willingly opening up to Star or Mumin. So maybe it's Glossaric, or Seth's ghost, or a live non-ghost Seth, or I don't know, Rasticor. Maybe the monsters have their own Glossaric who loves storytelling. And then when Star learns Toffee's tragic backstory and moving reason for doing what he does, she doesn't want to kill him and instead asks him for help fixing Muni. And then we end on a montage of everyone hanging out and writing new laws and stuff. Happy ending, massive societal change, everyone lives happily ever after, yada yada. But of course, that's not what happened. admitting of personal bias. And one last thing. Yes, I sympathize with Toffee. I am a monster enjoyer, as previously stated, but more importantly, as someone who often doesn't express emotion properly and bottles it up as a result, I really do hate how everyone is so quick to call him a sociopath or heartless or whatever. To get personal, I have multiple times been in public having a meltdown and having no one realize because my expression of real distress was too subtle. I have had people ignore my pain until I was actively screaming at them to help me. It's come to the point where I have to scream and bite and hurt other people just to get them to acknowledge something's wrong. It's not all sunshine and special interests being autistic. Sometimes you're like Star, another autistic-coded character, and life is bright and happy, and everyone is willing to accommodate you and explain how things work and not take advantage of your position in society as an autistic person. But sometimes you're like Toffee, and no one is willing to give you any of that grace. Sometimes people don't take your pain seriously until you hit them back, where it hurts. Sometimes people will walk all over you until you learn to become a wildfire that they cannot possibly trot on. Sometimes you have to try things again and again and again on your own, because no one else wants to know you need help. And that is okay. I would burn down Autism Speaks if I had the ability, and I sure as hell would burn down Muni if I were Toffee. So, I don't care what Word of God says, and I don't care if others think I'm reading too far into this. I really do believe that there's more to Toffee than meets the eye, because the creators of Starverses created a fascinating character who could have been so good for myself and others like me. They just dropped the ball in every way. So many people just don't think of us as people with our own fascinating stories to tell. They assume we're too stupid or challenged or uncommunicative to have good stories. They assume that no one would relate to cold-hearted, emotionless freaks like us. But they're wrong, I assure you, they're wrong. I have met and made friends with so many Starverses holdouts who only joined the fandom because they liked Toffee for similar reasons to me. I was one of them. We are not alone, and we are fed up. I'm fed up with people like me never getting to be the heroes, never getting to tell their own story, never getting to acknowledge the pain and wonder that comes with being different, without caring what neurotypicals and cishets and humans think of us. There is joy in not thinking the same, not expressing ourselves like everyone else, not being quite like anyone expects us to be. Watch The Owl House, by the way. It isn't perfect, and it's more about ADHD, but it's a large step in the right direction. TLDW. Starverses: The Forces of Evil's racism metaphor doesn't work primarily because of how they handled Toffee, the show's biggest antagonist, and also the only totally monster main antagonist. They killed him off in a cruel and unusual manner, and replaced him with sympathetic colonizers who get happy endings. Secondly, because Star never really struggles with being not racist and is never challenged by the monsters around her. Toffee could have easily challenged her, but he didn't. Toffee should have been a huge deal, but at the end, Star doesn't grow or change because of him. He doesn't prompt any development or challenge Star. The biggest and only monster antagonist, the most impactful monster character, passes in and out of the plot and nothing happens. There's a lot more I could talk about on this topic, such as the weirdly gendered aspect and how they're so afraid to hurt their female villains, or the monster's total lack of culture other than the size shifters, eats people and sometimes makes weirdly racist dances about it, and occasionally decorating with skulls. But I think I've made my point. Starverses: The Forces of Evil is certainly better at some things than other media properties I could name, but it's still really not great. But I think the scene that really sums this all up is the one at the end of Conquer, the final episode of Season 3, where Star has learned about the horrible truth of her family history, and the way to resolve all that horribleness the right way, in the show's opinion, is giving the wand, the instrument of destruction used to enslave and kill the monsters, not to the monsters, but to the daughter of the monster carver, the rightful human ruler. Things haven't been right since Star's family took the throne. But the thing Star and the writers forgot was that they were never right when there was a throne in the first place. Sponsor? Yeah, this video is sponsored by me. I like having money, so I take commissions. Art commissions. I have a link in the description to my commissions sheet. I do art, and I'm working on making one for writing, if you're willing to pay for it. I do 2 slots a month, so get them while they're hot. Speaking of writing, this is the part where I plug my fix-it fic for Star vs. Star and Marcy and the Forces of Evil. It's a 5-part series that starts similar to canon, but slowly diverges, and where the 500k word slow burn aspect is not a relationship, but Star's growing realization that all is not what it seems in the morality of her world, and the conflict is black and white, but her side is not the white. It starts not with Toffee, but with a young Septarian girl named Shinjai, who breaks into the Diaz home instead of Princess Smooshie and sleep spells. Marcy Diaz, dead name Marco of course, makes the first steps in befriending her because Shinjai is just a scared teenager trying to escape St. Olga's, and she does not want to steal Star's face. She just wants her identity papers and possibly some money to help her escape. And then she tells Star she'll be a better queen than Moon, and Star is officially her friend. And then Toffee arrives on the scene, and it all plays out how it does in canon, except we see hints that not all is as it seems. Star can't see it because she is racist, but there are odd ways in how Toffee interacts with the people around them, be they monsters or just random bystanders. Blah. They're a little different from canon. For one thing, they have a stated personality. For another, they're non-binary and collect names and titles like canon collects convoluted ships, and they dress like their rich husband just died of mysterious causes. And of course, it soon becomes apparent that they outclass both Star and Marcy in every conceivable way, except Star's raw magical power as given to her by the wand. Combine it with a legendary monster supposedly able to take down even Solarian warriors called the Forces of Evil, who Glossaric said Star was going to somehow kill whether she liked it or not. And a strange puzzle begins to form, showing a big picture that Star does not want to see. As of the time I'm writing this, we've finished the Meteora arc, and Eclipsa is now queen, and Meteora, who's just a traumatized, scared teenager, is crown princess. But more importantly, there's a dark magic threatening to destroy the entire world, and Toffee, who survived Battle for Muni but did not get what they wanted from it, is playing the ecologist in this modern world and trying to get the people in power to actually do something. Anything. It's very fun for me to write. Not fun for anyone actually involved, except perhaps the series' weirdo narrator. The weirdo narrator is actually fairly important to the plot, too, so keep an eye out for her. So, I don't know when I'm gonna make another of these videos. I tend to do things when I feel like doing them. But if you like this video, go ahead and like and subscribe. And if you hate this video, go ahead and argue with me in the comments. Just please list every point you have individually, so I can digest and discuss them with you. I won't answer obvious bait or hate mail, but I do like to debate things with people. If you agree with me, then do that too. Unless this inexplicably goes viral, I'll try to read every comment. Credits. I don't have a Patreon. Should I have a Patreon? What would I put on Patreon? I would totally put weird scraps and things on it, and memes, and possibly allow you to help me choose my next giant project, so go tell me if you're interested in a Patreon from me. Video scripts, art, and stuff by Sage Silentfire. Editing by my English teacher mom. Most of it. I didn't have her edit everything. Special thanks to Dapper Critiker, Sans Blue 2, my other Tumblr friends, and the Monstrosities of Magic Discord. You guys are great. Bye. Okay, hello. This is Sage about over a year later. Star and Marcy versus the forces of Star and Marcy and the forces of evil, that is, has ended. It just ended, and I'm kind of sad about that. Also, shout out to Ultra Creepy Fucker Things on Tumblr because they made every single point I made in this video independently of me. So, thanks to them. Also, I'm writing a book. More details on my Tumblr soon. And at the end of Star and Marcy and Forces of Evil Part 5. Alright, bye.